Last lesson in chapter 9. Let's go ahead and get started. Answer your quiz, get your sticker. Okay. So, 1776, even before the war was over, states began writing their own constitutions, and several used Virginia's constitution as a model. Our actual constitution, which is written later, is based heavily on Virginia's constitution. So they all had these ideas, and most of them included basic freedoms: trial by jury, hold elections, freedom of the press, which sound familiar. Those are like some of the first 10 in our Bill of Rights. But these are the reasons that the Revolutionary War was fought for. Those are the rights that were taken away by the British government during the course of all the build-up to the actual war. And the Declaration changed how some people thought about individual rights. You know, it claimed you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but it actually says life, liberty, and property. And while the Declaration said that, not all state constitution guaranteed those same rights. Women couldn't vote. Most of African Americans remained enslaved. And as you can see, as we move to the next slide, some people began to think that slavery should be ended. So the Quakers are the first group that really come out hard against anti-slavery. And after the Declaration, you know, those lines that all men are created equal really ignited some people's passions about this topic. And so Elizabeth Freeman in Massachusetts sued, saying that the Declaration that all men are created equal as the basis for defense, and they agreed. In 1783, Massachusetts abolished slavery, and then other northern states abolished slavery also. And it's the South didn't follow along because the South needed the workers. The North was much more industrialized and didn't need the heavy reliance on slavery as the South did. But it really did set up this interesting idea that in the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson, who was a slave owner, said that all men are created equal, but some are more equals than others. When they said all men, he's referencing only white landowning men, not women, not slaves, not Native Americans. They weren't considered all in that all men are created equal, according to Jefferson at least. Western settlements. Congress didn't have enough money to pay for the soldiers. Those Continentals didn't really pay for things. So instead of paying them money, they paid them in land. Since the British were gone, they had lots and lots of land that they could give away. So they paid the soldiers in land based on rank and time of service. Not only the soldiers moved west, but entire families started farms. Congress needed money and was happy to sell those farms and that land to both individuals and to companies. There were some soldiers in the northwestern forts. Spain still had lands along west and southern borders, and Native American groups still lived along the Ohio River and further west as you continue along. The fastest areas of growth for the new country were the Ohio River Valley, and specifically south. 100,000 people moved in the area that is now Kentucky during the Revolution, when they continued moving south into what's Tennessee. People would follow the Ohio River and began to settle lands north of that. We call that the Northwest Territory. A territory is simply land that belongs to a nation, but it's not a state and is not represented to a national government. One of those territories now, you consider Puerto Rico as a territory, a protectorate of the country. The people that live in Puerto Rico are technically American citizens, but they don't have a say in Congress. They don't get a vote. So they're kind of that in between. That's kind of what a territory is in between. And at first, there was no way to tell where each person's land ended, especially when they moved west, so it was really kind of chaotic. 1785, Congress passed a land ordinance. The ordinance explained how land was to be measured, divided, and sold, so how it was to be surveyed. Land was to be measured into squares called townships, and the large square that was the township could be then divided into 36 smaller squares within the township. And later on, schoolhouses would tend to be put right in the middle of those townships, and so no one could have to travel too far to get to the schoolhouse, since the schoolhouse would be right smack dab in the middle of the township. The Articles of Confederation only really held the country together during the war. Its other really important aspect to it was the Northwest Ordinance. This was one of the few successes the Articles of Confederation had as a government. And in 1787, Congress came up with the ordinance. It set how territory was to be governed and how new states could be formed within the Union. And they decided that any region that had at least 60,000 people could become a state or apply for statehood. The ordinance promised freedom of religion and would not allow slavery to be legal in any state formed in the Northwest Territory. So you can already start to see the seeds of the Civil War being set, because here are these new ordinances. Slavery wasn't allowed. Slavery's not allowed. And as more states get into it, into the Union, you start to see that idea of, well, why can't we have slavery, really start to eat away at the nation. So this is where those seeds of the American Civil War, which happens, 70 years from this date, begin. Without British troops, Native Americans found it harder to keep settlers off the lands. Remember, the Proclamation of 1763 said no settlers into the Ohio, no settlers west of the Appalachians. They're gone. British soldiers are gone. Little Turtle United troops fought settlers in the Northwest Territory. In the early 1790s, Native Americans defeated American troops, but by the middle part of the 1790s, American were starting to win battles against Native Americans, I'm sorry. In 1795, Little Turtle agreed to the Treaty of Greenville, which gave up most of their lands in the Northwest Territories. And with that, the Native Americans no longer trusted that the United States was really going to follow through on promises that they make. The relationship between Native Americans and the new nation was really, really strained at that point. Some Native Americans took advantage of other ways. They decided to sell their land to land companies. The Holland Land Company wanted to buy much of the land in western New York. A man named Seneca, from the Seneca tribe, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his real name. I apologize to him. We call him commonly as Red Jacket. Wanted his tribe to sell the land. The leaders didn't agree, but they did. Oh, I'm sorry. Red Jacket did not want to sell the land, but the Seneca leaders did. Settlers continued to move further and further west, making farms, creating towns, and the life for Native Americans would never be the same after this. And then here's a look at some of the Northwest Territory. The Northwest Ordinance was set in 1787. You can see new states came into the Union: Ohio in 1803, Indiana in 1816, and on and on. You can see that, again, no slavery was allowed, and the Ordinance of 1787 really was one of the only major successes of the Articles of Confederation. Thanks so much, guys.